Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a look at my favorite paint correction car detailing products. Now recently I did a video on my favorite car washing and decontamination products, so this video will be about the next step or process, which is cutting and polishing car paint to remove defects and restore gloss and clarity prior to applying paint protection products, which will hopefully be another separate video coming up. I'll keep this brief, but I just want to be clear that the way I've selected these products is based on what I personally use daily, weekly, if not monthly. I just think that's a more honest and fair way to put this list together, rather than listing products I may have tested and liked, but for whatever reason, whether it be local availability, cost, or a number of other factors, I just don't use on a regular basis. So if a product you love isn't here, doesn't mean it's bad or what I'm using is any better, just means it's not what I typically use. Having said that, I know that not everyone has access to every product or brand in every part of the world, so I've tried to add quite a number of honorable mentions in each category that I think can be great alternative options. There's a lot to go through here, so let's get to it. The first category is fine or finishing car polishes. First on this list is NV Finesse Polish. There is no other finishing polish I've used more than Finesse in recent years, which is simply based on the fact that it finishes better than any other polish I've tried, especially on softer and more sensitive paints. That really is the real test. It initially has a nice amount of bite to remove any minor defects and then quickly breaks down to produce fantastic gloss and clarity on just about any paint type. It can at times dust a little, especially if overworked, though it shouldn't be anything crazy. And the wipe off is about as easy as it gets with a super pleasurable user experience. It's just one of those polishes that I think is a must, especially on paints that are difficult to finish well on, and here locally it's also the cheapest one on this list. Next up is Scholl Concepts S30 Plus. The easiest way for me to describe S30 Plus is that it's so similar to NV Finesse, but with perhaps a fraction less cut and finish, though unless the paint is really particular, you may not even see the differences. S30 Plus can dust a fraction more, but again, it's nothing crazy, and its wipe off and overall user experience is very nice. This has just been another standout polish for close to a decade. It's just a fraction more expensive than Finesse, but in most cases I'll use either one quite happily with fantastic results. I've heard rumors of a new S30 Black potentially in the works that I would just love to see, as I think everything that Scholl puts a black label to is simply outstanding. Third on this list is Shine Supply Classic Polish. This is just another top tier polish I think has just a fraction more cut than the previous two polishes, and unless it is a super soft paint, it also finishes perfectly in most cases. I also feel Classic Polish has a little more work time, which can sometimes be beneficial, but if you go too far it can dust just like most polishes. I also think that if you are looking at both Shine Supply Classic Polish and Shine Supply Classic Finish, Classic Polish is the one to go for, as in all my testing, it not only cuts better but also finishes better between the two. It comes in at another low price point here locally, and it's just another all-round outstanding polish. So onto some honorable mentions and great alternatives, which I'll try and move a little quicker with. First is the Final Polish by The Last Detail. If you like working your polishes longer, maybe want a touch more cut and hate any dusting at all, but still want a great uniform and fantastic finish on most paint types, this could be a great option. It is a little newer to the market and a little more pricey, but produces such a nice, consistent finish time and time again. I almost gave up on Meguiar's M210 ever landing here locally, as it took many years for it to get here. And although I can't say I've had extensive experience with it, as I've just obtained it more recently, Meguiar's M25 was a favourite of mine for many years, and I'm hoping that M210 will perhaps be even better, but I'll need a little more time with it to draw a proper conclusion. Last here is Polish Angel Master Polish. If you have deeper pockets and the user experience of a product is top of your list, I can say that Master Polish is without a doubt the nicest smelling, low dusting, buttery wipe off, and just a purely pleasurable car polish to use. I won't pretend that its high price is justified, but there is something just so nice, enticing, and rewarding in its user experience, and it also certainly performs very well. Next up is medium or one-step compounds that have a great balance of cut and finish. First on my list is without a doubt my most used and perhaps my most loved compound, which is Scholl Concepts S20 Black. In all my years of paint correction, I still haven't found a compound that has decent cut yet can finish so perfectly on most hard, medium, and even softer cut paints all in one step. For me, it's really its finish that shines here, as there's lots of medium compounds that can cut relatively well, but few that can finish so well consistently. Now, just like most of the previous polishes, it can once again dust if you push it a little bit too far, but its wipe off is generally really nice. It works very quick with a fast cut to finish cycle, and it can be used quite successfully on a number of different cutting to finishing polishing pads. It's also widely available across the world and tends to come in at a very low price point, at least here locally. Second on my list is Ribes DA Fine Compound. This sits in between Ribes Ultra Fine and Coarse compounds, and for me is without a doubt the brand's best current compound. It has an almost endless polishing cycle with just amazing lubrication and next to no dusting with such a beautiful wipe off. I also feel it cuts maybe even a touch more than S20 Black, but perhaps doesn't finish quite as well overall. It is a little heavy on the polishing oil side, which just means it takes longer or a little more IPA to remove it. But many times on finicky paints, it has been a great troubleshooting compound for me and is also quite low in price here locally. Third on this list is Meguiar's Ultimate Compound. I've always had a bottle of Ultimate Compound around since I first tried it, and to this day I still think it's the best consumer focused compound ever made that can put many pro focused compounds to shame. I feel it has excellent cut matched with a great finish on most paint types with such a user friendly experience that even lends itself quite well to hand polishing. It's dirt cheap, widely available pretty much everywhere, and if you've never tried it, I highly recommend you give it a go, maybe even more so for those of you who are trying paint correction for the first time. So on to some honourable mentions. I really like Sonex's Perfect Finish, but unlike the brand classifies it as a finishing polish, I disagree and feel that its cut and finish is more in line with a medium or one-step compound. Now on many hard paints it will finish perfectly, but on many medium and certainly softer paints it does tend to leave some fine haze and micro marring more in line with a slightly heavier one-step compound. Having said that, I think it may be the lowest dusting compound in this whole review with such a long polishing cycle, if that's something you prefer, and quite a decent wipe off. Here locally it is a rather expensive compound, almost twice the price of most others, but I understand why so many have come to love it. Next up is 3D1 Hybrid Compound Polish. This is another fantastic polish I think really deserves a place here. I think it's similar to Scholl S20 Black in so many ways, with some differences being that 3D1 tends to have a longer polishing cycle, which can lead to a bit more cut and even tends to dust a little less. Whereas S20 Black tends to finish a little better with a faster polishing cycle and a nicer or easier wipe off. So there's pros and cons either way, as is the case with just about every compound here. It's also a little more pricey here, but 3D1 is in my opinion a great solid one-step compound. The next category is heavy cutting compounds. First on my list is NV Precision. The reason I still hold Precision in such high regard after so many years is because there is very few cutting compounds that can finish with such amazing gloss and clarity, which makes it not only a very capable heavy cutting compound, but also a one-step compound on hard to medium paint types. I also feel that when used with foam polishing, one-step or foam cutting pads, this is where precision really excels, providing rapid cut and then relatively quickly finishing down with a great finish. It's low dusting and the wipe off is generally quite nice for a cutting compound. I don't however feel it's a great compound for use with microfiber and wool pads in general, it just hasn't been formulated that way. But with foam pads, it's the compound I reach for more than any other, also being quite cheap here locally. If you've never tried NV Precision, like using foam pads with dual action or rotary polishers, and like working quickly with low heat and fast polishing cycles, I just can't recommend it enough. Second on this list is Shell Concepts S2 Black. I'll start by saying that I personally think that this is the best new heavy cutting compound to hit the market in the last few years. For me, it excels because its cut is extremely high, yet its finish is almost too good for a compound in this category. It differs a little to precision in that it does rely on longer polishing cycles to not only achieve greater cut, but also its best possible finish, and that even extends to the easier wipe off. In other words, if you don't work it or break it down enough, you won't get the great cut finish and the better user experience. I also feel it works great with foam, microfiber and wool pads on just about any polishing machine. And it would be fair to say that it's quite a low dusting compound, though its wipe off can be a little sticky at times, especially if you use too much and don't break it down enough. Like all Shell products, locally it is quite cheap, and a compound I love almost as much as S20 Black. Third on this list is the Last Cut Plus by The Last Detail. I was absolutely blown away the first time I tried the original Last Cut, and I have to say that the newer Last Cut Plus is even better, providing more cut yet still finishing just as good, if not even better at times. What really sets this compound apart is that it's just so adaptable in that you don't need to adjust your style in how you like to work, but it rather adjusts itself to work so well no matter if you like to work longer or shorter cycles or with a heavier or lighter handed approach. Put simply, it just works well every time no matter what, and almost seems to thrive with microfiber pads that are definitely more demanding to work with. It tends to be low dusting with lubrication for days and generally has quite a decent wipe off. It is a more expensive compound here locally, but one I feel my arsenal just isn't complete without. So onto some honourable mentions. CarPro Ultra Cut was so close to making my top 3 that I went back and forth a little. It is 100% the best cutting compound CarPro has ever produced, finally given us an extremely capable cutting compound that still finishes pretty well. Some other things I really appreciate about Ultra Cut is that it's generally very low to no dusting, has a very nice wipe off, and I would say it produces the most uniform edge-to-edge finish, more so than any other compound I've used. What this means is that when needed, a second follow-up polishing stage is just so easy because the minor haze from its cut is just so consistent and fine. I would really love to see CarPro update Fixer, their medium compound, and reflect their fine polish to match the amazing achievement they've produced with Ultra Cut. Sonex Cut Max just had to make this list. It is perhaps the lowest dusting, heavy cutting compound I've ever used that also has such a long, well lubricated polishing cycle few other compounds can match. There's also no doubt it cuts extremely well, especially when mated to a rotary polisher. Where perhaps it does lack a little for me is in its finish that does tend to produce quite heavy compounding swirls, scratches and holograms, I think more so than any other compound here. So unlike some other compounds on this list that can match its cut, give or take, and can also finish quite well on some harder paints, that's just never really going to happen with Sonex Cut Max. It's also quite an expensive compound here locally, but with all that said, it's still, in my opinion, one of the greats in this category. Last here is Shine Supply Classic Cut. If I had to pick the closest compound to Classic Cut on this list, it would be NV Precision. Now they aren't the heaviest cutting compounds on this list, but they do tend to be two of the best finishing ones that still have a great amount of cut. Now Shine supplies a couple more even heavier cutting compounds such as flat top and chop top, which do go a little further aggression wise. But for me, Classic Cut has the best balance of great cut, even being able to finish almost perfectly on some harder paint types, and comes in at a very reasonable price point. So onto all-in-one and primer polishes. These are compounds that can clean, cut and finish, as well as fill in defects and seal the paint all in one step. I honestly didn't have to think too hard here in placing CarPro Essence as my favourite all-in-one primer polish. I don't think there's a better finishing primer polish on the market, with primer basically meaning it's an all-in-one polish that you can ceramic coat directly over. For me, it's been a lifesaver on so many soft and sensitive paints, as you don't need to perform an IPA wipe after it, and it also leaves a hardened and slick resin behind that prevents wiping swirls during the coating or final finishing protection stage. I also found that it can prevent older mineral deposits or water spots from resurfacing, and although it is quite light in its cutting ability, its finish tends to be extremely saturated and glossy. It is a touch more expensive, but a polish I highly recommend. Second on this list is Ruper's Uno Protect. I was just so impressed with this all-in-one polish when I first tested it, as it seemed to blow the competition out of the water with its great cut and finish, not to mention its super nice user experience. Ruper's has more recently released Uno Advanced, which is meant to be similar but have a far more durable sealant. It is on my list, but I still haven't tested it out, so I can't comment there. But Uno Protect is quite cheap in price, really seems to perform so well, and one I definitely recommend if you're after a great all-in-one polish. Third on this list is 3D Speed. Speed has been such a great benchmark all-in-one polish for so long. I used it so much in my mobile business and really loved it. It is really speedy to use, tends to be quite sun friendly, very affordable, and just produces great results easily and consistently. I do feel that on softer paints it can sometimes leave a little haze and micro marring, but on medium to hard paints it generally finishes quite perfectly. I also think its wipe off is nice, as is its pleasant smell, and is just one of the great all-in-one polishes. Some honourable mentions here would be Shine Supply's Slickback. Just like CarPro Essence, it's another all-in-one primer polish, so you can ceramic coat over it. I feel it has more cut than Essence, so on harder paint types it can be a little bit better at removing minor defects, but still finishing perfectly. But on those super soft and sensitive paints, Essence may still be a better choice. Next here is Auto Gleam Super Resin Polish. It can be debated whether Super Resin Polish is really an all-in-one, as it tends to fill defects more like a glaze, but it does still have some very minor correction ability, so I think it can pass as one. But in a nutshell, I think it deserves to be here, as the finish it produces is as good, if not better, than most all-in-one polishes, and it's extremely cheap and so easy to use, even applying it by hand. Last here is Poor Boy's Black Hole. Now this isn't an all-in-one polish, it is a true glaze, but I'm not going to do a separate category on car glazes, and I felt I had to add Black Hole here somewhere. Adding so much gloss, saturation and depth to car paint, as well as filling in minor defects extremely well. It is more or less a beauty product for car paint, but if you're looking for a show car finish glaze, I don't think you're going to find anything better than Poor Boy's Black Hole. The last category in this whole compound segment is metal polishes. A few decades ago, I was using metal polishes far more often, but these days it's hard to find any metal on most new cars. Having said that, I do really like CarPro Metallic Cut. It is a little volatile, so don't go smelling it too closely, but it has an amazing ability to cut through oxidation and even address some minor scuffs and swirls with the right pad and technique choice. It's also very low dusting, and the wipe off tends to be rather easy. In my testing of almost a dozen different metal polishes, it was one of the best in both cut and finish. Second and last on this list is California Customs Purple Metal Polish. This is really a classic, being around forever, but even to this day, placed against many new metal polishes that have come out since, it still tends to be one of the best at removing metal oxidation and restoring the finish with high brilliance. It tends to be very cheap in price, have a nice user experience, and is just hard to fault. So on to machine buffing pads, starting with finer finishing and polishing pads. At the top of my list here is the ShineMate Red and Orange foam pads. Now the red pad is a finer finishing pad that generally on those softer and more sensitive paints is really my go-to, as it's just so gentle and plush and fine, being able to finish perfectly on those sticky Japanese and single stage paints. The orange pad is just an ever so slightly stiffer pad with just a touch more aggression that makes it more suitable for finishing on more paint types, from hard to medium and even some softer paints that aren't overly sensitive. These ShineMate pads tend to be about half the price of most premium pad brands, but are extremely durable, very capable, and I think the best value pads on the market today. Next on my list is the Lake Country HDO Orange Foam Pad. In my opinion and experience, this is easily one of the greatest finishing, well-balanced, smooth, and generally quite durable pads on the market when it comes to finishing well on a variety of car paints. Now it does come at a price being more than twice the cost of that of the ShineMate pads, but I do really love this pad, with cost perhaps being the only negative I can point out. Third here is the Rippers DA Fine Yellow Finishing Foam Pad. Rippers has more recently updated and fine-tuned the shape and form of their extremely popular DA foam pads, and I think they do feel even smoother, a little more durable, and at least here locally they are a couple of dollars cheaper than they were previously. So I have to give Rippers a little thanks for being able to improve their product and still offer it at an even better price point. With cost aside, I honestly struggle to have a favourite between the Lake Country and Rippers fine polishing pads. To me, they are both exceptional class leaders here for premium polishing pads. A great honourable mention here is the Lake Country SDO foam pads. I'm really grateful that Lake Country did decide to make these more affordable SDO pads that come in at about half the price of their HDO range, but are still fantastic. Now they don't run as beautifully smooth as the HDOs, especially on large throw DA polishes, and on some sensitive paints may not finish as well so easily. But for the price, I think they are such a great option, and I would say pretty much in line with the ShineMate pads here as a whole. Last on this list is the Rippers DA Ultrafine White Foam Pad. What I've noticed with the more recently updated design of this pad is that it's now a little thinner but also a little stiffer, and with a slightly different feel of its foam cells. I didn't use the previous Ultrafine pad a ton, as for me it generally didn't finish all that well, but this new design update seems to not only finish better but also cut and run smoother. In a nutshell, I'm a fan of this new Ultrafine pad, as it seems way better than the older design in every way. Next up is medium or one-step pads that have a good balance of cut and finish. First on this list is one of my all-time favorites and perhaps my most used pad, which is the Lake Country HDO Blue Foam Pad. From rock-hard paints with light to moderate defects and medium to softer paints with heavy defects, this pad has such a wide range to both cut out defects and finish brilliantly on so many paint types with an array of diverse defects. Now it can sometimes suffer from heat more easily and can also be a bit of a pain to clean out well at the end of the day, not to mention it is rather pricey, but the results I achieve with this pad consistently is what keeps me coming back to it. Second is both the ShineMate blue and yellow foam pads. The blue pad is just a fantastic intermediate pad on medium to softer paints, finding that perfect balance of cut and finish on those paint types. while the yellow pad is a little more aggressive and perhaps more suited to medium to harder paint types to achieve both great cut and finish there. These and really all ShineMate pads are always very durable, very affordable, and just great performers, especially for the price. Third on this list is the Rippers Yellow Medium Wool Pad. Rippers really changed the way I think of wool pad these days, as these softer, more uniform and fine stranded wool pads not only cut brilliantly but can also finish better than any other wool pad that came before them. They really are exceptional and standout wool pads every detailer should try, as they may very well become part of your arsenal. Now, I do feel that they aren't the most durable pads, as the middle foam layer does tend to degrade a little faster than I'd like, and they are also rather expensive. But performance and range-wise, it's hard to find a better wool pad on the market. So on to some honourable mentions. Up until about a year ago, I don't think ShineMate made any real great microfiber or wool pads. They just never really hit the mark for me. But in the last year or so, all of that has changed with so many new fiber-based pads coming out from the brand that are really fantastic. One great example is the new T100 one-step microfiber pad. The cut of this pad is just exceptional, and on harder paints it can also finish perfectly. The heat generation is low for microfiber, and it seems extremely durable. I've only had a few months of testing with it, but it's quickly becoming one of my favourite microfiber pads ever. The Lake Country Blue SDO foam pad also needs to have a place here. Now once again, I do like the HDO variant better. It's smoother, better balanced, and can be easier to achieve a greater finish. But for the price, this is just an exceptional pad that can in many instances perform just as well as its bigger brother. Last on this list is the Buff & Shine Eurofiber pad. Now, I honestly don't use this pad mainly because it has no safety buffer zone beyond the backing plate. In other words, it's exactly the same size as the plate. But with that aside, I think it cuts very well on harder paints and can also finish great and seems to hold up very well. I also completely understand why it has become a favourite of many detailers, and I think it does deserve a place here, being a great performing microfiber pad. Last in the area of buffing pads is heavy cutting pads. First on this list is the Lake Country Low Lint SDO and HDO wool pads. As far as brute heavy cutting power is concerned, I've yet to find any machine pad that can cut as much as the Lake Country Low Lint SDO wool pad. Now, its finish is generally quite bad, and although it can run reasonably okay on a rotary, it's quite a rough running pad, especially on dual action machines. But the powerful cut of this pad is what really makes it shine, not to mention it's also quite cheap in price. The Lake Country Low Lint HDO wool pad finds a better balance of sacrificing just a little cut to provide a much nicer user experience and even better finish. But it's only fair to mention that it is about twice the price of the SDO. I think it's also fair to mention that in my experience, these pads shouldn't be called low lint, as they lint just as much as any wool pad. But with that said, I do think they are extremely capable and durable cutting pads. Second here is the Lake Country HDO microfiber cutting pad. For me, this has been my number one microfiber cutting pad for a good 5 years or so, as the center heat dispersion hole allows these pads to run cooler, the balance and smoothness is on point, and the strong cut and reasonable finish is as good, if not better, than most microfiber pads in this category. They also tend to be a little cheaper in price than many competitors, but I find them even more durable and really hard to fault. Third on this list is the newer ShineMate T130 wool pad. This is perhaps the first ShineMate wool pad that I've ever really liked, and I more than just like it, as I think it's really exceptional. It cuts just so well and so fast, yet is very well balanced and smooth running with a reasonable finish for a pad with this heavy cutting category. it's great for use on rotary, dual action, and even gear-driven polishers, and comes in at a very affordable price point, also being seemingly quite durable at this stage of testing and use. An honorable mention needs to go to the Ripper's Blue Course wool pad. Now this pad isn't quite as full-blown aggressive at cutting compared to the previous ones, but it will blow all those other pads out of the water in just how well it can finish. So Rippers has found more of a balance here, producing a wool pad that not only cuts very well, but also finishes better than you'd expect. It's not cheap, and I also think it could be a little more durable, but performance-wise, it's a real winner. I don't think it would be fair not to add Meguiar's microfiber cutting discs to this category. Meguiar's is responsible for creating the first truly great microfiber cutting pads, and even to this day, more than 10 years on, this pad is arguably as good as any microfiber pad on the market. Here locally, it is quite an expensive pad, and I do think its lack of a heat dispersion hole makes it run hotter than it otherwise would. But with that said, it's still such a well-made, high-performing pad that paved the way for all the other great microfiber pads that have followed since. Last here, I'm going to quickly add the new Ripper's microfiber pads. Now these microfiber pads are available in finer to coarser grades, and I won't pretend to have had enough time with them to offer an experienced opinion. But what I can say is that I've never liked any of Ripper's past microfiber pads. They never cut well and always finished horribly. These new ones, however, are a different story. Finally. They aren't cheap, and like I mentioned, I need more time with them, but my first impressions are very good. The next category is full-size or large machine polishers. I didn't have to think too hard about what is my current favourite large machine polisher. It's the ShineMate EX620 series that comes in both 21mm 6-inch and perhaps my personal favourite, the 15mm 5-inch. A big reason why I like these machines so much is the higher amount of torque that allows these machines to run at lower speeds while still having very little stall, and at the higher speeds they are just beasts, and I think the most powerful DEA machines currently on the market. But it goes a little beyond that, as the 620 series machines are incredibly smooth, robust, and about 2 years on now, extremely reliable. They are also very affordably priced, but I think way better than the more expensive machines in this segment. Second on this list is another couple of ShineMate machines. The EB351, 21, 15, and even 12mm variants. Now machine to machine, the EX620s are without a doubt superior, but they have one big flaw, which is the power cord. I didn't even realize myself how much I'd love cordless machines until I really started using them. It's honestly hard to go back. Having said that, the 21mm 6-inch is a beast of a machine, and I think the most powerful large cordless dual action currently on the market, and all the battery life, charging, and use on these new cordless machines has been on point with no real issues there. So I'm more than happy to recommend them, as about 2 years on now, they have been just fantastic machines. Third on my list is yet again a ShineMate, the EB251 large cordless rotary. Rotaries are pretty simple machines, they just spin like a drill. So as long as the rotary has enough torque, is relatively lightweight, and doesn't overheat, it's generally going to be a good machine. There's not much else to it. This cordless rotary does all those things very well, is very affordable, and I honestly just don't see myself using a large corded rotary ever again. I think it's fair to mention that this rotary can have a louder high pitch at certain speeds in the range, but these days I do tend to use noise cancelling earbuds, so it's not a huge concern for me. One last thing I'd say here is that it's been a long time since we've seen any new large polishers from Rupes or even Flex, and the silence is almost deafening. while ShineMate has been real busy bringing out new after new machine, and I think really capitalizing and just producing class-leading polishes with no real competition in sight. So onto some honorable mentions. If you don't mind having a cord and are after a full-size rotary, I think it's only fair to say that the Rupes LH19E is perhaps the best car polishing rotary on the market today. I feel it runs a little quieter, cooler, has a nicer feel and finish than the ShineMate, and perhaps even a little more low down grunt. It is more expensive and it has the cord you have to deal with, but it is also a fantastic rotary polisher. I don't think I could make this list without including my beloved Rupes Milli Polisher. And honestly guys, I could also add the Flex VRG 3104 here, both being gear driven polishers, but for me, just personally, I do prefer the Milli. I've put so many hours on this machine, and although it is now showing its age, it's been so reliable, so capable, and just a beast that I think really needs to be on this list. Last here, I am going to add the Rupes LHR15 and 21 Mark III dual action polishers. Rupes is responsible for the conception and execution of the large throw dual action polisher, and the LHRs from the original Mark 1s, 2s and current Mark 3s have been the smoothest, at times the most powerful, and just so well built and finished. The only thing I'll say once again is that these machines are in desperate need of a new model or update, maybe even finally a cordless version if they are to still compete with this quickly evolving market. Next up is smaller mini polishers. At the top of my list is the new Rupes HLR75 cordless polisher. I love the distinct design that lends itself to single hand use. The power and torque of this little DA polisher is class leading, as is the battery life, and the build quality is also on point. In other words, this is just a little beast and I love it, but it does have one big flaw, which is the lack of a safety latch to prevent the polisher from accidentally firing up, which it tends to do at the worst possible time. If Rupes could solve that with an update, it would be almost flawless. Though it's only fair to mention that it is also quite a pricey machine. Second on this list is the ShineMate EX603 Mini DA Polisher. If you can deal with the cord, there is no more affordable, powerful and virtually indestructible mini 3-inch DA polisher on the market today. I would love to tell you that ShineMate has made a cordless version that is just as good, but that would be a lie. This EX603 is still their best 3-inch performing polisher, and with all things considered, still one of the best options on the market today. Third on this list is the ShineMate EP 230K Mini Rotary Polisher. This is a newer machine, more recently landing here, but I absolutely love the lightweight, small form factor, and ample power this little machine has. If you're after a rotary that can handle 1, 2, and 3-inch pads comfortably, that is reasonably priced and very capable, this could be such a fantastic choice. So on to some honorable mentions. I did a review on the Flex XFE 7-12 Mini 3-inch polisher when it first came out, and I really loved it. It unfortunately went missing from my shop shortly after, never to be found again, but I did really like its performance, its build quality, finish and feel, and would recommend it as a corded mini DA option. If you're after a corded mini rotary, the Flex PE 8-4 is still perhaps the best overall on the market, and if you want a solid alternative that not only comes in cheaper, but also adds about 40 buffing pads, 1, 2 and 3-inch backing plates and extension bars, the ShineMate EP 803 is just outstanding value to get you started with a mini rotary. Last in the area of machine polishers is nano and hybrid machines that tend to be focused around even smaller 1 and 2 inch and sometimes even 3-inch pad sizes. I'm going to start here with a machine that was meant to be here in Australia months ago, but we are still waiting for it to arrive. I have had access to a pre-production sample of the new ShineMate EB210 for a few months now, and I must say that I don't think I've been more excited and impressed with a new machine polisher for some time. As far as micro polishers go, it is quite small in size, but the power this tiny machine puts out, whether it be with 3-inch, 2-inch, 1-inch and even half-inch pads and extension bars, it's just so impressive and capable. I really do think this is going to be one of those legendary machines that could potentially replace 2 or 3 other machines, as it seems to be able to do it all. I even think it's got more torque than ShineMate's larger dedicated 3-inch machine. Now, I would have liked to have waited until a post-production model was in my hands before passing judgment, but I think this is a polisher that every detailer should be looking very closely at. Second here is the original U.S.A Nano hybrid polisher. Even about 6 or 7 years on now, this micro polisher is still a standout machine. Mated to an extension bar on rotary mode with a 1-inch pad is how I mostly use it, and its super small and lightweight design and great access to intricate areas and great battery life still makes it such a great machine. I also use it in dual action mode for finishing and spot machine sanding, so it is very versatile. Now personally, I don't feel it has enough torque for use with 2-inch pads. It should really be a dedicated 1-inch polisher. And the price is a little pricey, but still such a groundbreaking machine deserving of a place here. Third on this list is the U.S.A TA50 pneumatic polisher. I've absolutely used and abused this 2-inch air-driven polisher to the ground, and I can tell you it's pretty much indestructible. Now it does require quite a beefy air compressor to run it effectively, which I know not everybody has. But if you do, it is a beast of speed and correction power that I just adore and highly recommend. On to an honorable mention. I haven't owned the Flex PXC80, but I have had the chance to use it and I think it deserves to be on this list. What I found is that as a dedicated 3-inch DA polisher, it's really fantastic, and even as a 3-inch and potentially 1-inch rotary is also quite decent. Where I had issue with it was as a 1-inch dual action polisher, as it just stalls and is honestly useless in that mode. I think if Flex just kept it as a 3-inch machine, it would be great and one of the best in that area. But selling it as a machine that can also be a capable 1-inch dual action polisher is really not a fair description. Okay guys, we're almost at the end here, but I just want to add a few more bonus paint correction products, but I'm going to move more quickly as I wrap it up. Masking tape. I don't think there's a better, more affordable one for car detailing than CarPro's masking tapes. Another great alternative is the Kamui Kabuki. I really like it, but it is a touch more pricey. Wet sanding. Over the last few years, the Sia sanding discs have become my absolute favorites. They produce the most uniform finish and are the least likely to create any pigtail scratches. The discs also work great for hand sanding wrapped around a hand sanding block, and I really highly recommend them. Paint correction lights. I've used and had many brands from Nova to Magnitude and Take Now lights, and I would highly recommend each and every one of them. But if you can afford the higher price of the scan grips, I would have to say that based on performance, settings, and all the diverse options and even battery life, it's hard to go past them. Paint thickness gauges. I've had 2 of these Waxit paint thickness gauges in my past 2 shop locations over the last 5 years or so, and they've been super accurate, reliable, and bulletproof. I pretty much use a detailing apron all day, every day, and my favorite is the CarPro one. It's very lightweight, quick drying, not too long to drag on the floor, and the dual pockets are a great size. Anti-vibration polishing gloves. I've been experimenting and trying quite a few ones over the last few years, and these U.S.A gloves are by far the best shock absorbing ones to help minimize that buzzing feeling in your hand, and you can remove the finger ends for hotter environments. The Tornado Basic Blower. For blowing out your pads, whether it be on dual action, rotary or gear driven machines, as well as removing dust from the car surface, the basic blower is fantastic, solid and quite affordable. Rotary extension bars. If you have a mini rotary, these are a must to be able to reach and access those tight areas you otherwise wouldn't be able to get to around many intricate panels and trims. Car paint markers. I'm sure many of you have seen me using these for many years. They allow you to mark, write and highlight areas on car paint. You can then easily wipe off with water or a light cleaning solution. Cloths and towels. There's plenty I use for paint correction, but I guess I would say my favorite are these Breeze Elite cloths. They are a really nice Korean weave, are a touch more pricey, but just beautiful solid cloths. Well, that is finally it, guys. I'll try and add as many links as I can in the description box, so keep scrolling down if you want to see all of them. This video was a lot of work to put together, and although I'm certain there are many more great products that didn't make it here, I do hope this video was helpful to many of you out there. If you enjoyed this video and would like to say thanks and help support future content, you can do so by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ccad, in which I'll have a link to in the description box, or you can now hit the thanks button below the video. Please give this video a like, comment below and subscribe to show your support for this content, and I'll see you guys soon.